Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports for another daily Formula One news wrap up, and a lot to talk about today. We'll move straight into the first news article for you guys. Adrian Newey has revealed and named Ferrari as his biggest emotional regret of his Formula One career. The legendary Red Bull car designer has been courted by many other teams during his career, but there's one team that he regrets not joining during his illustrious career. Adrian Newey has named his biggest regret of his Formula One career as not going to work for Ferrari. Having won a total of 12 constructors' titles across teams such as Williams, McLaren and Red Bull, Newey was courted by Ferrari on numerous occasions, including 1993 and 2014. He ultimately turned down all of the offers to join the Scuderia, citing previous difficulties with his first marriage while working in IndyCar in the US and not wanting to make the same mistake moving to Italy in 1993 during his second marriage. But in 2014, Red Bull was looking for a new engine supplier after the failure of Renault to produce a power unit that could match the Mercedes. He went on to say, "My discussions in 2014 with Ferrari were purely out of frustration," explained Newey. "We were in this position where Red Bull hadn't produced a competitive engine in the turbo hybrid era. Which, when that happens in the first year, you say, okay, it's new rules. We all make mistakes." He went on though. Newey went to Renault's headquarters at the Champs-Élysées in France, along with Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, to convince the marquis to invest more in their engine development in Formula One. The team was not met with the best response from then CEO Carlos Ghosn, who would later leave the company in 2019 amid allegations of underreporting his salary and gross misuse of company assets. Ghosn's reply was, "Well, I have no interest in Formula One. I'm only in it because my marketing people say I should be." And that was such a depressing place to be in, said Newey. "We knew Mercedes wouldn't give us an engine. Ferrari had a great engine, but I'd taken us away from Ferrari in the first year because I believed, right or wrongly, that if you're in a championship battle, Ferrari would never give us equal equipment. So we were stuck with Renault for some huge amounts of time before looking forward into the future. Being in this position where it looked like we couldn't be properly competitive in a visible point in the future was just a very dark tunnel to be in." When asked if he had any regrets from turning down offers from Scuderia, he said, "Emotionally, I guess to a point, yes. But just as, for an instance, working with Fernando Alonso or Lewis Hamilton would have been fabulous, but it never happened. It's just circumstance sometimes. That's the way it is." And certainly in Formula One, it's very difficult to look back at your mistakes in terms of moving to different teams to go and work for them. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would look back. A lot of drivers, a lot of team personnel would look back at their past and go, "Oh, maybe I should have moved to Red Bull at this point. Maybe I could have won a championship with the team. Maybe I could have made more money." But unfortunately, you can't look back at the past. Of course, Adrian Newey could have moved to Ferrari, but if he'd moved to Ferrari, he still would have possibly won no championships from 2014 to now, as Ferrari have not won a single Constructors or Drivers' Championship since I think it was 2007 with Kimi Räikkönen. It's difficult to look back. Of course, you never know what the outcome could have been from that Ferrari move for Adrian Newey. Maybe he would have been able to turn it all around at the Ferrari marquee, but it's all in hindsight, and it's all easy to say what could have happened now. But yeah, very interesting to see that Adrian Newey wishes he could have gone across to the Scuderia team. Of course, he'll be happy at the moment with his current team doing very well, winning the Constructors' Championship last weekend out in Japan, and possibly taking the Drivers' Championship this next weekend in Qatar. We'll move on though to the next article with Christian Horner giving an exclusive interview to Sky Sports and him saying Red Bull's 2025 driver lineup options with Lando Norris and a update on Daniel Ricciardo. The Red Bull boss speaks to Sky Sports about a range of topics, including the driver market for 2025, plus when AlphaTauri's Daniel Ricciardo will return from his injury, and singing Wonderwall in a Japanese bar. Christian Horner says that Red Bull have received quite a bit of interest about their seat next to Max Verstappen for 2025. After his team clinched the Constructors' Championship in Japan, Red Bull team principal discussed a range of topics, including the drivers' matters for his 2025 seat. Speculation about what Red Bull might do with the second seat at their team for 2025 continues to abound. Sergio Perez is on a deal which runs out at the end of next season, and will be up against a host of other drivers, including Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda, who are both staying in the sister outfit, AlphaTauri, for next season. And Liam Lawson will be in the reserve driver seat for 2024. Lando Norris has also been long viewed as a prime contender for that second seat in the Red Bull, as his McLaren contract ends at the end of 2025. Asked specifically about Norris, with McLaren having indicated last week in Japan that they were already having good conversations with the Briton about 2026, Horner replied, "Lando's a great driver. He's a big talent, big personality, and of course, he's one of those drivers that you have to keep an eye on." But there's many drivers that you keep an eye on as well. There's a generation of drivers out there at the moment that have got a huge amount of talent. Now, being Max's teammate is never going to be easy, and some drivers may be up for that challenge, some may not be. But of course, as well as the drivers we have in-house, we keep an eye on all of the driver market. As you can imagine, there's quite a bit of interest from certain sectors about driving a Red Bull car. Horner added, "Max is operating at such a high level that his confidence, his commitment, his talent is absolute at the moment, and it's difficult to envisage somebody beating him in the same equipment. But there's some great talent out there, and of course, what we want is the best two drivers we can possibly field. So ideally, that will come from within the talent pool that we have. And if we don't believe that that capability, we'll look outside of that and as to who is available." Speaking about Ricciardo's return for Qatar, Christian Horner revealed that it is less than likely. Ricciardo is currently sidelined from racing with AlphaTauri while he recovers from the broken bone in his hand that he sustained in an accident at the Dutch Grand Prix on August 25th. The Australian has missed the last 3 full race weekends as a result, with Lawson filling in for the Australian. Christian Horner went on to say, "I would probably say less than likely at the moment on his return in Qatar. His recuperation is going well, but he's fixed in that seat for next year, which means that he does not need to rush a hasty return for Qatar, where maybe another couple of weeks for Austin, which is a hell of a bumpy circuit anyway, might be better use in preparation for that track. I know he's got his sights fixed on Qatar, but he'll drive in the simulator next week and then we'll make some decisions based on that." Glad to see and hear that Daniel Ricciardo is making some good recovery, and hopefully we'll be able to see him back in the car very soon. I see we have a couple of people in the comments now and in the live stream. Please do be sure to go and vote in that poll, which is asking which Formula 1 team would you want to work for, just based on that first article speaking about Adrian Newey and his regrets over moving to Ferrari in 2014. Currently, we have someone having voted for Mercedes there, and yeah, no one else having voted there just yet. Do be sure to go and vote in that poll. I'd love to hear all of your opinions and where you would like to go and work in a Formula 1 team. Moving on though to another Red Bull-based article. Christian Horner says Perez is still held back by the lack of confidence in Formula 1's high-speed corners. Red Bull's team boss Christian Horner said that Sergio Perez's lack of confidence in the car through high-speed corners continues to haunt him in the 2023 campaign. Not for the first time this year, Perez struggled to get going in Japan after having issues to get the RB19 balanced to his liking in Friday practice. Overnight work did little to improve the matters, as he qualified 5th, some 7 tenths behind his dominant teammate Max Verstappen. Perez's Suzuka race quickly spiraled out of control after he made contact with Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton at the start and later speared into Haas's Kevin Magnussen. He received a 5-second penalty for the latter incident and another one for overtaking Fernando Alonso under the safety car as he came in for a new front wing. Team principal Christian Horner admitted that Perez sitting out his second-time penalty. Christian Horner admitted that Perez sitting out his second-time penalty in Japan instead of carrying it over to the next race in Qatar was the only positive from the Mexicans' weekend. But Perez's confidence issues through high-speed corners, of which Suzuka has many, remain at the heart of his massive performance gap to Verstappen. This is a big confidence circuit, and where Sergio was struggling was mainly in the high-speed corners compared to Max, Horner explained. You could tell Max was confident that he had You could tell Max the confidence that he had, the speed that he was able to carry through the high-speed stuff was mind-boggling. When asked if the performance gap between Perez and Verstappen was problematic for Red Bull, which faces a stiffer challenge by rival teams, Horner continued to point to Verstappen's dominant form as the main factor between their lap time. He's still second in the World Championship, and I think he's finished second to Max 6 times so far, he added. So, had Max not been there, it would have been another 6 races on top of that he'd already won. Max is absolutely at the top of the game. He's the best driver in Formula 1 at this point in time, and I think everything has come together, car, driver, and team in harmony. Certainly it has been a car and driver in harmony at the moment in Formula 1, with Red Bull and Max Verstappen being extremely dominant throughout the season, taking the majority of the race wins. They've only lost 1 race this season, with Max Verstappen's win streak being defeated in Singapore by Carlos Sainz, finally breaking that dominance from the Red Bull team. But Red Bull and Max Verstappen once again taking it again in Japan this last race weekend out. But it's good to see that we are starting to see some of the other teams slowly inching towards the Red Bulls, at least in qualifying. Of course, in race pace, they are unmatched at traditional circuits. I say that because, of course, they did have that issue in Singapore where they just failed and fell back quite a bit. And, I mean, I'm not complaining. It was nice to see another team winning. Hopefully, we'll get to see some tougher competition next year. As Ferrari's Vasseur says, Ferrari can't postpone the fight with Mercedes to the 2024 season. Ferrari Formula 1 team principal Frédéric Vasseur says that Ferrari Formula 1 team principal Fred Vasseur says that the Maranello outfit can't postpone the fight with Mercedes' rival by putting its full focus on 2024. In the 4 races held since the summer break, Ferrari has passed Aston Martin for 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship and cut the deficit to Mercedes in second from 56 points to 20, while Carlos Sainz became the first non-Red Bull winner. Winner of the season in Singapore. Like other teams, Ferrari has already switched its wind tunnel program to 2024, but Vasseur insists that the team will continue to chase Mercedes without sacrificing any efforts towards next year's program. You don't have to postpone the fight. The fight is with Mercedes today, and we have to take it, said the Frenchman. It's always the best to prepare for the future. For the mindset of the team, for everybody to be in the fight is crucial, and we'll keep this fight until the end of the season. He added though, it's never a sacrifice because I think that performance is coming from performance. It's too late to go into the wind tunnel for this season, but what we can do on the current car will help us for next year. Ferrari had a new floor in Suzuka, one of the last of the major upgrades for the SF23, that are working their way from the tunnel to the track. However, Vasseur downplayed its significance in the context of the improved tire degradation that the team demonstrated in Suzuka. Well, what you can bring on the car is a matter of potential, he said. The deg is another story, and we don't have to mix everything. But for sure, potential is always helpful, and for less than a 10th, we would have been on the first row. And then it's a different story. You have clean air, and so on. Sometimes small details are making, at the end of the race, a mega huge difference, because when you're in the fight to have to copy others, it's a different story. But I think it will be like this until the end of the season. We have made the pole position in Monza for 100th, last weekend in Singapore for 500ths, something like this in Japan. We lost the front row for 500ths, and it will be a matter of hundreds for the rest of the season. Vasseur stressed that the team has shown good performance for a while, even before recent upgrades. We have also to avoid drawing too quick to conclusions, he said. Before this break in Spa, we were also in good shape. But Charles Leclerc started 4th. He was theoretically on the front row before he started from pole position and did a good race. As it's a matter of hundreds of seconds sometimes, you do a small step. You have the feeling that everything has changed. It's not exactly the reality from race to race and from track to track. Even the drivers sometimes, the setup is more fitting with Carlos or Charles. It's sport in the end. You can accept that one is doing a better job than the other, from one weekend to another. And I think we have a positive competition, and this is also helping us to improve. Well, we certainly hope for a more competitive Ferrari next season. We want them to be competing at the top of the Formula One food chain. We want them to be fighting with Red Bull, Aston Martin, Mercedes. We want them to take more race wins. Of course, they are the only marque to take a race win other than the Red Bulls this season. So glad to see that they have been able to get to the bottom of their tyre degradation issues, which has been the major issue in 2023 and 2022 in their difference to the Red Bulls, because Red Bull are just able to eke it out in race pace with their tyre degradation. They're able to last forever on a set of tyres, which really does help them, of course, in the races. But it's good to see that the Ferrari team are slowly being able to sort out these issues and find more pace in the races. I see we have TC there in the comment section saying the car doesn't suit Perez's driving style. I guess the car is designed for Max, really. It certainly is. We spoke about this yesterday there, TC, about the fact that that Red Bull is built around Max Verstappen because he likes a really pointy car. He likes a grippy car in the front, whereas Perez prefers a car that is grippy towards the rear. But of course, Max Verstappen is that number one driver at the team, and this is known. And that is why that team and that car has been completely built around Max Verstappen. Moving on to another article, speaking about Oscar Piastri. Piastri has exceeded expectations as a Formula One rookie, reveals Lando Norris. The Australian driver has been rewarded with a new McLaren contract ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix. And Lando Norris now reveals that he believes McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri has exceeded expectations in his rookie Formula One season. The Australian joined the grid with enormous pressure from a stellar junior career that took him 3 successive championship victories that culminated in the Formula 2 title. Further weight was added to his shoulders by the contractual disputes between Piastri, McLaren, and former employers Alpine, who had assisted Piastri's rise through the ranks, with the spotlight shone directly on him as he prepared his step up for Formula One. But any concerns over an underwhelming start to his career in the sport have been dismissed, with a stunning first season in which Piastri has waited patiently for a car that will help promote his racing ability. Piastri's performances have led to a new contract taking him to the end of 2026, with the Woking-based outfit and extension immediately validating a first podium of his career at the Japanese Grand Prix. Reacting to the news of Piastri's extension, Norris told media, "Congrats to him. I think any contract that allows you to be in Formula One longer is a great thing. He's performed. He's done everything he's needed to do and probably exceeded most people's expectations from what he's been able to achieve already this season. He's certainly pushed me a lot, and he's done a really good job. So congrats to him for another few years. We've had a fun first half of the season, and it's a lot of progress. For him to be part of that progress, and to hopefully continue on to next year, 2025 and 2026, for himself, it's going to be something to look forward to. Certainly, we're really excited to see what Oscar Piastri can do throughout the rest of his Formula One career, and I certainly am touting him to be a great Formula One driver in the future, and possibly a future Formula One champion. I see we do have a couple more votes there in that poll right now, asking which Formula One team you would want to work for, 50% going to Ferrari and 50% going to Mercedes. And if you, of course, have another vote, do be sure to let us know down in the comment section. Yeah, really exciting to see that Piastri has had his contract extended to the end of 2026. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing what he can do, and really seeing what he can do in terms of the fight with his teammate, of course. He's really been pushing Lando Norris this season and outperforming him in qualifying in certain races. He outperformed him in qualifying in Japan, and we'll have to wait and see what he can do throughout the rest of the remaining races in this season. Our next couple of articles, Max Verstappen pinpoints Red Bull's greatest 2023 strength. The team went on to clinch its 6th Formula One Constructors title after a dominant display throughout the 2023 season and at the Japanese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen has now pinpointed the greatest strengths of his Red Bull car in 2023, which has enabled him to retain the Constructors' Championship and allow the team to win it for the 6th time. The Milton Keynes-based team has won 15 of the 16 races in 2023, often by sizable margins, with Max Verstappen taking 13 of those, including 10 in a row between Miami and Italy. Only an off weekend in Singapore prevented Red Bull from the possibility of a clean sweep. Verstappen is set to win his third title in a row with the team at the next race in Qatar, in what is his seventh full season with the team, having recorded 48 race wins and set numerous records from the 2021 season onwards. He has taken Lewis Hamilton's mantle as the man to beat as Mercedes continue the struggle to master the ground effect regulations, but Verstappen believes the foundations of Red Bull's success can be traced to a simple trait. I think just everybody knowing their role very well, and of course being good at what they do, has been the key to the success of Red Bull's dominance. We have strong communication in the team, and people are working well together to achieve results like this, Verstappen said. Part of Red Bull's success in 2023 has been down to the fact that it has not had a consistent main challenger. At various points, Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston Martin, and latterly McLaren have been the closest team to Red Bull, with wild swings from weekend to weekend. This was noted by team principal Christian Horner. The field has been moving around behind us. One week it's McLaren, next week it's Ferrari, next week it's Mercedes, Horner explained. We've been 99% consistent at the front of the field, and we've been fairly limited in the amount of development that we've done on the car. But I think the development that we have done has been efficient enough to maintain a reasonable margin. This has certainly been the reason that Red Bull have been able to maintain their gap ahead of the rest of the grid this season, is because of the fact that they have just been consistent at every single race this season. They've hit the ground running from the first race, had a major gap, and we have not seen that gap being closed by the teams. In certain races, of course, like Singapore, there have been the small falters from the Red Bull team that have left them out of contention, but that cannot be said for the majority of the season. They've just been consistent throughout, and it's rarely a great amount of effort that has been put in by the Red Bull team and everyone back in the Red Bull factory. It's certainly a brilliant amount of work that they have been putting in. Moving over to another article, speaking about Nick de Vries, who we haven't necessarily heard about for quite some time. Nick de Vries has been handed a multi-year contract in a stunning racing return. Nick de Vries has revealed on Instagram that he will be returning to racing in 2024 in Formula E with the Mahindra racing team. The Dutchman endured a tough rookie season in Formula 1, driving in an underperforming AlphaTauri car and struggling to get to grips with it. Being constantly outperformed by his teammate Yuki Tsunoda ultimately led to the team deciding to make a change, and was replaced by Daniel Ricciardo after the British Grand Prix. This meant that his Formula 1 career lasted only 11 races. Leading to criticism for AlphaTauri from a number of ex-drivers that they hadn't given him enough time to showcase his talents. At the age of 28, de Vries was relatively old to be a rookie, but has spent most of his racing career enjoying success out of Formula 1. He won the Formula 2 championship in 2019, as well as the 2020 and 2021 Formula E championships, with the Mercedes Formula E team. Now he is heading back to the sport, where he excelled for 3 seasons, but this time with a different team. In his announcement on Instagram, he said, "Announcement, coming home to Formula E with Mahindra Racing. I'm really excited for this new challenge and chapter of my career. The foundations are really solid, and the future plans share our common vision. Together, we can bring out the best in each other, and I can't wait to get started." Having spent 3 successful seasons with Mercedes team alongside Stoffel van Dorn, the Dutchman decided that the time was right to attempt to break back into Formula 1. He did that successfully, but when he was dropped by AlphaTauri, it became clear that it was unlikely that any other team would be willing to take him on. This time around, de Vries will be driving alongside Swiss driver Eduardo Mortaro for a team that only managed to finish 10th in last year's season standings. On the announcement of the 2 drivers, Mahindra Racing said on their official website, "Mahindra Racing is delighted to announce the signing of Nick de Vries and Eduardo Matara on multi-year contracts to compete for the team from Season 10 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. Season 10 marks a new chapter in the history of Mahindra Racing, the only Indian team on the grid, and the last of the FIA Formula E's founding teams compete in its original identity. The signing of two drivers of De Vries and Mortara's caliber and experience is a positive step on the team's journey towards becoming championship contenders once more, after a difficult start to the new Generation 3 regulations in Season 9. Certainly we'll be keeping eyes on what Nick De Vries can do once again in Formula E. We'll see whether he can take that Mahindra team up to championship victory, or whether he will be relegated back just down in the bottom of another motorsport category. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens to him. Moving on to our final Formula 1 news article, Sainz impresses in Ryder Cup appearance. The Ferrari driver teed up as a part of the golfing event's all-star match. Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz showed off his impressive golfing skills when taking part in the Ryder Cup all-star match in Rome. The Biennial golf event, which sees 12 of Europe's best players take on a team from the United States, began with a celebrity face-off between two teams led by former Ryder Cup captains Colin Montgomery and Corey Pavin. Sainz, who plays off a handicap of 9, was selected in the first group to play alongside disabled Tour pro Tommaso Perino against fellow pro Kip Hoppert and tennis legend Novak Djokovic. Despite some impressive skills being displayed by the Spaniard, he was unable to prevent a 3-1 loss to Poppert and Djokovic at the Marco Simone Golf and Country Club, with his team Pavin squad also losing out overall. But Sainz was given a fine welcome by the crowd in Italy, his first appearance in Ferrari's home country since his Singapore Grand Prix victory. He will return to the track next weekend when Formula One returns to Lusail for the Qatar Grand Prix. Yeah, really cool to see Carlos Sainz taking part in some other forms of sport. We know he has a major love for golf, and really cool to see him competing against the likes of Novak Djokovic. Certainly not what I would have touted to see in between these last few races, but really cool to see nonetheless. TC there in the comments saying, if McLaren's concept is converging towards Red Bull's, they will probably be the closest challenger to Red Bull next season. We're certainly hoping that will be the case. That would be great to see a team getting very close to Red Bull. TC saying, Nick De Vries is such a gentleman. I like him and is a classy human being. He is a really nice person, and he gets on really well with Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, and it was really disappointing to see that he didn't have a great season this year with AlphaTauri. We were really rooting for him, but he really did struggle in that team, and unfortunately that led to his demise and being ousted from that AlphaTauri seat. But glad to see that he has found another seat in another form of motorsports, and yeah, glad to see that he won't be sitting on the sidelines for too long. Moving on though, if all of you are not interested in anything other than Formula 1, I'd suggest clicking away now, but just some other news in the world of motorsport. Speaking a little bit about the world of MotoGP, we did have a lot of interest in our last few Formula 1 race streams. We asked you guys what you would be interested in watching a little bit more, and the majority of you guys were interested in MotoGP. So just a little bit of news now about the MotoGP. With an article here saying the rest of MotoGP might as well not turn up if Marquez gets a Ducati. Marc Marquez sealing a deal to ride for a Ducati satellite team Gresini in 2024 would mean his MotoGP rivals may as well not turn up. Such is the opinion of Cal Crutchlow, a former Honda stablemate of Marquez, who has long been very vocal in his admiration for the six-time champion, an admiration enhanced by what he's seen from Marquez's data. Marquez has a Honda contract until the end of 2024, but the idea of him breaking that contract and heading to Gresini, where he would ride a Euro Ducati Desmo Sedici to replace Fabio Di Gianantonio, has only heated up in recent days. Crutchlow, who is now a test driver at Yamaha and is riding as a wildcard entry this weekend in Motegi, says that he is an observer from the sidelines, or as an observer from the sidelines, he would prefer Marquez to stay at Honda. because it would be a better story. If I was Marc, I have no idea, he said, when asked of the decision Marquez is facing. I've always said, though, that if Marc goes on a Ducati, the rest may as well not turn up. I've always said this. For this reason, I don't want him to go. I want him to turn it around with Honda. Marquez has kept his cards close to his chest, still so far this weekend, at Honda's home race in Japan, but did not suggest an announcement would be forthcoming. I also don't care, Crutchlow continued. I would want to watch a good race on TV. I still believe that Marc is the best rider talent that I've had the privilege to ride alongside. Because obviously, I was riding the Honda at the same time as him. And I know what he was doing. I understood it, but I just couldn't do it. The talent was incredible. I don't think he's lost his talent. I just think in the moment the bike isn't letting him do what he used to be able to do. If it did, I still think he's out in front of the championship. If he goes to Ducati though, maybe it will be completely boring, or the story could be a revolution that he manages to turn it around with Honda and come back. I think that story would be a better one for everybody. Marquez abandoning Honda for a satellite ride would suggest that there isn't faith from his end that his employer can reverse anytime soon the current MotoGP trend of European manufacturers vastly outperforming its Japanese counterparts. Ducati, Aprilia and KTM have combined for 12 of 13 Grand Prix wins this season, 36 of 39 Grand Prix podiums and 35 of 39 sprint race podiums for the season so far. Crutchlow, however, has no doubt that this will swing back, even though he said of his employer Yamaha, what they've always done is now not working, and that they need to understand the way to go forward. We know Yamaha and Honda can build the best motorcycles in the world because they did that for many years, he added. For many years, Ducati didn't win, Aprilia were nowhere, and KTM has only just started to come really strong, but it will turn around. In 5 years, maybe 2 Japanese are back on the front, and the others are nowhere again. This is racing. You have to congratulate them for what they did. But being at the front now, there are other people. But I believe that Yamaha and Honda are both strong manufacturers. They know how to build a motorcycle, and they are both good engineers. That's the problem, is that now we need to change the way of working, because the game has changed. This is reality. Obviously, what the Europeans are doing is working, so we need to get in this direction a little bit as well. Certainly very interesting to see what is happening in the world of MotoGP. Could we get a move from Marc Marquez away from that Honda outfit to the likes of a Ducati sister team? This would be very, very interesting to see, and could be, wow, really, really a big upset in the future if we do get Marc Marquez on a Ducati bike. Of course, we don't know whether he would be competitive in that bike, but if he does get given the strong platform of a competitive motorcycle underneath him, I certainly believe that he will be able to take a race win, because we've just seen in the past he's made really terrible mistakes, and I think it's due to the fact that that motorcycle is a lot more tricky than inherently what he had in the past, and possibly the Honda outfit is just making some mistakes in terms of its development for the current season. As we have Mark here in the comment section now, just as I'm about to sign off, Mark, but yeah, just finishing off on this article here about Marc Marquez. We need to be more open-minded. We need to be more open-minded. Yamaha know this, and I'm sure Honda do as well. And I believe that when they do it like this and start to act faster, react better with more open-mindedness and not to be so safe, then they'll make a big step. Certainly, it would be a big upset if Marc Marquez, who has been with Honda for so many years, moves away from that outfit. But you never know. Marc Marquez is obviously getting towards the end of his racing career. As a rider, your lifespan is not necessarily forever, so you wouldn't want to be in a non-competitive team for the majority of your career. So he would be looking to get into a more competitive team. So we can't necessarily fault him for wanting to get into a more competitive bike. But that is it from me here today. A little bit of motorsports news and a little bit of MotoGP news to wrap up this Formula 1 news video here today. But nonetheless, thank you very much for joining me here today. I have been Reece here of Forever Motorsports. Please do be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are not already. Once again, thank you very much for watching.